It is a crisp Thanksgiving week Saturday. I'm absolutely missing the Ocean State after a great 2 weeks of RIIL playoff broadcasts for field hockey, boys and girls soccer. But I can say I'm happy to be back home in southern New Jersey and going to be bubbling myself for the next couple of days just to make sure as I get tested that everything is okay, since I have traveled between multiple states, and then hopefully getting a chance to spend some time with my family this week. Hopefully you are all well and looking forward to the chances you have to be able to spend some time with family and give thanks for the good that we have had, at least in this difficult and different year. On this Saturday morning, November 21st, 2020, we hope that you're all continuing to be safe and well wherever you are around the world tuning in from, and welcome to Sports World Weekly. I'm Matthew Gellis. We'll get to results from the Premier League in just a moment. We'll walk you through the MLS playoffs and set the stage for the big games, but we start with breaking news. The Atlantic Coast Conference announced today that the Clemson-Florida State game will be postponed. The game was originally scheduled to be played today in about 2 hours from now at noon. The postponement follows this morning's conference call with both teams' medical personnel, who determined that due to situations involving both of the teams and their respective campuses, they were unable to agree on moving forward with the game. Both teams continue to adhere to the minimum outlined protocols within the ACC Medical Advisory Group report. That full report is available on the ACC.com. As was previously announced, the ACC scheduling model included 11 games, 10 conference plus 1 non-conference game, played over 13 weeks with each team having 2 open dates. Now, Clemson has been in this situation already in which they played a game with players being held out. That was the game against Notre Dame. This is a cancellation situation. They're going to have to look very, very carefully at the schedule to see where there is an open date remaining for both Clemson and Florida State, and to see if they can be able to shuffle this game back around into play, because a game such as this, with both where Clemson and Florida State lay, could potentially affect the ACC championship game and could potentially affect college football playoffs. That is a very interesting situation that we are seeing develop, and we will be continuing to follow this story as it goes throughout the day. Stay tuned on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island, Instagrams, Twitters, Facebooks, any social medias, or sfbnri.com. We'll have more information on this as we get it, but this is something that just came across within the last few minutes. The ACC announcing that today's Clemson Florida State game has been postponed. The game was originally scheduled to be played at noon. On to the Formula One report. There is no race this weekend, so as we normally come on air having qualifying results for you and setting the grid, it is an off week. 3 races left to go in the 2020 Formula One season, but after Lewis Hamilton did it again, he came this time from no man's land down as far as 6th place. At one point, he ends up finishing P1 and capturing the inner city Istanbul Grand Prix, and therefore by his finishing in P1, earning enough points that he clinched his 7th FIA World Championship with a thrilling victory in the wet weather in Istanbul, Turkey. The world record holder for career victories in races now has also equaled the man that he passed for that record, former Ferrari driver Michael Schumacher, in the number of world championships. There could be no more conversation about who is the best. It has been put to bed now that British driver Lewis Hamilton is the best in the history of Formula One. He has the most number of championships ever won. He has the most victories in races ever won. He has literally broken and now set every single world record that there can be in Formula One. Mercedes-Benz has won the most Constructors' Championships. They have now won the most ever consecutive Constructors' Championships. The only thing that Lewis Hamilton has left to set in his career as Hamilton, who clinches this title with 3 races to go in the season, will now have the opportunity next season, should he win an 8th title, to hold literally every driver record in F1, most race victories, most championships, and most consecutive championships as well. There are 3 more races to go in the shortened 17-race season, and while they are off this week, the teams are preparing for a double dose of races in Bahrain. They will have the Gulf Bahrain Air GP coming next Sunday, then the Sakir GP the following weekend. Both are at the same course, the Bahrain International Circuit, so there will be no movement by the F1 teams through the course of the next 2 weeks, and then they will finally close the season with the traditional Yas Marina race, the Abu Dhabi GP, on December 12th. The FIA has firmly stated that the 2021 season will be a full season of at least 21 races, perhaps as many as 24, with many familiar international tracks that did not see races this year back on the schedule. The F1 did skip Mexico, Canada, the US, and Brazil this year. The FIA is expecting to have all 4 of those tracks back next year, and potential that there could be a few more races added, as there were some new tracks or returns to old tracks that were added into the schedule this year, such as Mugello and Imola, that the F1 could see themselves going back to. They will see perhaps as many as 24 races next year, and the traditional start of the season in March, as we will hope to see that most of the world has received some type of COVID-19 vaccine at that point. Now on to England and the Premier League action. Only 1 match in action today, as the now top of the table Chelsea Blues have taken on 13th place Newcastle. The Magpies had all sorts of issues with the far superior Blues, who took them down 2-0 to pull level with Leicester on 18 points. The Foxes will play a top 5 match tomorrow, that is Leicester, as they will take on 4th place and defending Premier League champions Liverpool. The Reds will be without Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez, who are out on injury for the rest of the season, and they are not expected at all to return. Trent Alexander-Arnold and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain are not expected to be back for another few weeks. Thiago Alcantara has been listed as doubtful. Jordan Henderson and Andy Robertson both suffered hamstring tweaks during the international break for competitions. But the bigger story of all of the injury reports that have been plaguing Jurgen Klopp and Liverpool, are the fact that superstar Mohamed Salah tested positive earlier this week for COVID-19 while on international duty with Egypt. While Salah has said that he doesn't feel any symptoms, the Egyptian FA rules and the Premier League rules are pretty strict, which may actually help Salah in this situation. Since Salah was isolated quickly and will undergo further tests, it is possible that the initial test may turn out to be a false positive. If he goes through 2 negative tests, he will be able to clear out and could be cleared for play, and then would be back in action for Liverpool tomorrow. The National Women's Soccer League this week announced its competition framework for the 2021 season, which will also feature the expansion Racing Louisville FC. Racing Louisville began building its roster through the expansion draft earlier this week. The team, led by head coach Christy Holly, will be powered by a dynamic duo at the front of the field of Kristen Press and Tobin Heath, who are currently playing overseas with Manchester United in the FAWSL. They will find themselves coming back to an ever-expanding landscape for the stars of the NWSL, continuing to display why the National Women's Soccer League is one of the most exciting and most competitive women's professional soccer leagues in the world. NWSL Director of Operations and Player Affairs Liz Dalton said 2021 is shaping up to be another big year for the NWSL as we continue to innovate our product, engage our incredible fans, and support our players and our teams. She went on to say, building on what we were able to safely accomplish in 2020, we're expanding the opportunities for our athletes and teams to thrive, and for our sponsors and partners to invest on their continued growth. The way it's going to break down, players will report to camp on February 1st, 2021. That is a little bit earlier than we usually see. with the first competition coming in mid-April when the NWSL Challenge Cup will actually return after its historic inaugural edition this year, which saw the Houston Dash take home their very first trophy in a thrilling final. All of those events were held at Zions Bank Stadium in Harriman, Utah, the home of Real Salt Lake's USL club and the Real Salt Lake Academy. After the Challenge Cup, based on guidance from the NWSL Medical Task Force and public health authorities, the 2021 Challenge Cup will take place in a multiple bubble environment similar to what we saw in the fall pod play and team markets, or some combination of the two. NWSL Chief Revenue Officer Mitch Pohl said, bringing back the Challenge Cup is an opportunity for our league to continue growing our fan base and showcase our world-class players with an exciting and competitive tournament ahead of the most important international tournament on the 2021 calendar, the Olympic Games. We're focused on continuing to build opportunities to expand our reach, expose a global audience to the best women's club soccer in the world, and provide meaningful opportunities for our teams and our players to perform. Following the 2021 Challenge Cup, the NWSL's 2021 regular season will kick off mid-May, with each team scheduled to play 24 matches. The full league schedule to be coming at a later date. 6 teams will qualify for an expanded NWSL playoffs, which will take place around November 2021. With the top 2 seeds receiving a first round bye, and the campaign will end with the NWSL Championship the weekend of November 20th before heading into another exciting offseason ahead of a 2022 season, which would be the NWSL's historic 10th anniversary season. This is expected to be season number 9 coming up. No women's professional soccer league in the U.S. has ever made it past season 3. That was the WUSA and the WPS before the NWSL was founded. So the fact that we are sitting here talking about the 10th potential season of NWSL soccer coming in 2022 is something that is absolutely amazing for the game. And the fact that we are talking about not only the expansion of Racing Louisville FC this year, but we will bring Angel City FC into the league in 2022. Angel City FC announced earlier this week that Bank of California Stadium, which is the home of the MLS side LACFC, will actually be the home stadium for their games coming in 2022. Angel City FC, of course, has made just a rock star entrance into the landscape of soccer in general, based on just the number of investors / owners that they have involved in this, and B, who the investors and owners are. Of course, most notably are all of the soccer names that are involved in it, but outside of soccer as well, from people like Serena Williams and Alexis Ohanian to Natalie Portman, who have all become a big part of this. One thing that is shaping up to be a difference of where we are now in the landscape of women's soccer to where we were back in 2000, 2001 is just the difference of investiture into the game and the difference of interaction from people outside of the sports community into the game as well. The NWSL in the past year has picked up major sponsorships from companies like Verizon, Google, Budweiser. This is changing the dynamic of the game. Angel City FC, for one, announced that Heineken will be a major sponsor of the team, showing just yet another growth of the league, the branding, and the sport as well. We will continue to see how this breaks down over the coming weeks and over the coming year. But all I can say is, as we go into this amazing development of a 2021 season into what will be the Olympics later on in 2021, and then to a historic 10th anniversary season in 2022, the NWSL and women's soccer in the United States is in one of the best places it has ever been and ever will be. You're watching Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back. Rhody Sports Show, part of the family of shows on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island, every Friday at 5 p.m., hosted by the legendary Ron Robert. And if you haven't seen last night's show yet, I implore you, not just because I was on the show, to go check out last night's show of Rhody Sports Show. It is available on YouTube, on Twitch, on our Facebook, Instagram pages. You can find it just about everywhere that Sports Fan Base Network Rhode Island is available. We had a phenomenal show last night as we got a chance to recap through the amazing action that we saw in the RIIL playoffs in the Ocean State throughout the course of the last week plus. And we were joined on the show last night by players and coaches from both Pilgrim and Tollgate programs in both boys and girls soccer. We had the Tollgate field hockey players on the program as well too, and we got a chance to just talk about the amazing games and the amazing highlights that we saw. Got a chance to call some great goals, some great plays, and just some amazing things that you will never imagine that you will see in soccer or in field hockey. I got a chance to call a goaltender scoring a goal in penalty kicks in a soccer match. Never in the 20 years that I have been around sports media did I think that I would see that happen. And I saw it happen in a high school game. Amazing past couple of weeks in the Ocean State. I miss you all. I will be back up very, very soon, and we will hopefully in January be able to get started on what could be a great winter sports season. Of course, don't forget, I'm available with you also every Monday through Friday at 4 p.m. Tune in to And That's the Game, a quick breaking news bite. It's a 10-minute, very quick blink it and you're going to miss episode each day on the weekdays as we break down the biggest news happening in sports throughout the year. I just want to recap on a breaking news story that we came on air with. The Atlantic Coast Conference announced that the Clemson at Florida State football game, which was to be scheduled for noon today, has been postponed. The postponement followed a conference call this morning between conference officials, the medical personnel for Clemson, and the medical personnel for Florida State. There have been issues involving both the Florida State and Clemson programs and their respective campuses as well. Of course, also issues just abound in just about every single state in the United States right now as this pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, continues to rage through this country and raging out of control, it seems, in many ways, that upon discussion, the medical personnel of both teams, both schools, were unable to mutually agree on outlined protocols, at least the minimum outlined protocols set by the ACC Medical Advisory Group, to continue forward with today's games. So the ACC then announced that the Clemson-Florida State game has been postponed. The ACC football scheduling model included 11 games, 10 conference, 1 non-conference game, played over 13 weeks with each team having 2 open dates. So there is a possibility, if the schedule aligns and or that the ACC can shuffle around games somewhere, that it is possible we could see this game get rescheduled. There is playoff implications into this game for both Clemson and Florida State as they try to challenge towards a potential ACC conference championship spot and a chance at the college football playoffs. So they're going to have to work this out. Both teams are continuing to do at least what they can to adhere to the minimum outline protocols within the ACC Medical Advisory Group report. That report is available. If you go to theacc.com, you can be able to actually see what that minimum outline protocols is. So that is yet another shock in college football, as we have seen a slew of games almost every single week getting canceled or postponed as we continue to battle through this COVID-19 pandemic. Clemson lost their last game to Notre Dame, so they are in a very crucial situation of needing to make sure they hold out every single game to reach eligibility for playoffs and also to reach that ACC championship game. We'll see what goes on there. Going to take one quick break here. You're watching Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Welcome back to the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island, and Sports World Weekly. Excuse me as I adjust my camera there, as I realized I'm a little lower than I normally might be. Back in the virtual studio, so doing a lot of things differently this time around. And one of those things with being in virtual studios is we have to all do a little bit of self-production sometimes, but we continue to be able to bring exciting content on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island, throughout the course of this difficult time, as we spent this past couple of weeks bringing you amazing RIIL action. If you didn't get a chance to see our live streams, all of the games are available on demand. You can go check them out on YouTube. Just go to sfbnri.com. You can click the live broadcasts button that is in our menu bar, or you can click the big red watch live button. Even if we are not live broadcasting, that will take you to our YouTube channel page, and then you can be able to watch all of those. A segment that I have put to the back burner and haven't done in a couple of weeks, but I'm going to bring it back for this week. Welcome to Matt's Moment. This is my chance to just kind of talk about something that is near and dear to my heart in sports and or in life. And for this one, I want to actually talk about something that we're doing here at SFBNRI, because I think this is so super important. And that is the Let Them Play RI movement. If you haven't heard about this yet or haven't seen this, this is something that got started a couple of months ago by Ron Robert, our principal and director, who realized that as all of the shuffling went around with sports, and especially with the high school sports, there's a lot of consternation that's been going on about who should be playing and not playing. What are the impacts of those teams playing? And yes, we've had field hockey. We've had boys and girls soccer. And we know that the biggest loss, especially in the Ocean State, especially in Rhode Island, has been football. There was a hard decision made by the RIIL, by the medical professionals, by Governor Gina Raimondo, to not have a football season in the fall, while we saw 34 some states in the U.S. play football seasons. It put an undue impact and a burden unnecessarily on many of the schools, the teams, the players, the parents, the coaches, supporters in the local community on that whole situation. What came out of that was a few instances of discussion, marching on the state capitol, being able to try to get the voices heard a little bit more about why are we not playing and how important it was to play. Out of that came, let them play RI. The idea behind this is exactly the statement that is being made by this. If we can have so many other sports like field hockey, like boys soccer, like girls soccer happen, if we can see 34 other states in the United States play their football seasons as is regularly, if we can see them have district championships and group championships and state playoff games and state playoff championships, why could it not happen in Rhode Island? Now, there's a lot to be said about looking at the situations at hand, looking at case numbers, looking at how the virus is impacting the community. It's no worse in Rhode Island than it is in any other state. In fact, in many cases, it might actually be better off in Rhode Island because of measures that have been done than in some other states who played their high school football seasons. College football is playing. College football is playing in the New England region. So why are they not playing high school football in Rhode Island? Well, the interesting thing is, while the question has been asked so many times over the past couple of months, there has not been one single concrete, hardcore, definitive, actual logical answer from the RIIL, from the Rhode Island state government, from even Governor Gina Raimondo's office as to why this has been done. Again, last week, Governor Raimondo said that due to the rising number of COVID-19 cases and the rate of spread and the rate of infection, she was putting a 2-week pause into things after the Thanksgiving holiday, which she might expect to be a super spreader type holiday. Here's something that I have to say about this personally. You all have it wrong. Closing schools isn't going to stop the pandemic spread happening. Closing bars and restaurants isn't going to stop the pandemic spread from happening. People will find other ways to congregate. They will find other ways to put things around. It's not going to stop the spread. Playing football wasn't going to stop the spread or not stop the spread. Everything that we have done to mitigate has worked in some semblances. This rise in COVID-19 cases that we're seeing right now is not because people are all of a sudden going out and congregating and spending time in restaurants and bars and whatever. If you listened to the health professionals all the way back in February, March, April, when this began, every single one of them predicted that the fall was going to potentially be a dark time. That as we went through the end of the fall into the winter, that it was going to be a dark time because we knew how the virus reacted. Now, here's the thing. If you look at the case counts in Rhode Island through September, October, into early November, if you look at the rate of infection, if you look at the hospitalization rate, if you look at the death rate, and I don't like talking about that number, but I'm going to mention it for the point of what I'm saying here. The football season in Rhode Island could have been played. If you played the field hockey season, if you played the soccer season, if you put in the mask restrictions, if you had the football players wearing face shields like we have seen many of the college and NFL teams do, there were efforts put in place to mitigate it. Sure, we have seen COVID-19 hit a number of college football teams, and they've had to shut down their facilities and or cancel games. We have seen it hit a number of NFL teams who had to shut down facilities and or postpone games. But what has happened in high school sports has been slim to none in terms of how the virus has impacted, reacted, and or spread. Again, as I said, shutting down restaurants isn't going to stop the spread. Shutting down schools isn't going to stop the spread. This virus is going to spread one way or another. Now, I'm all for mitigation factors. I'm all for protecting us in every possible way that we can. As I say at the end of every single show, stay safe, socially distance, wear your mask, wash your hands, listen to the public health professionals. They are important things that must be done to ensure that we get through this and get back to normal life. Again, this week, we have heard we're going to have another pause in sports. The basketball seasons, the hockey seasons that were expected to start within the next couple of weeks will now be pushed back and not start until January. Is it the right call? I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a public health professional. I'm not an infectious disease expert. All I can say is what I can analyze and look at from an intelligent position, from point of perspective, from talking to people I know who work in the medical field. And I've had many people tell me that just because you do or don't go to a restaurant doesn't change whether or not this is going to spread. 25 people in a restaurant, socially distanced, not wearing masks, is the same risk as 25 people in a house. Now, here's where the difference becomes into play. 25 people socially distanced in a restaurant, the likelihood of there to be direct contact spread is smaller. 25 people in a house probably are not going to be socially distanced, and the likelihood of there being direct contact spread is larger. Which is again why I say when we look at all these pause factors, these mitigation factors that could put into place, shutting down restaurants and bars, shutting down gyms, restricting things to certain hours that you can or can't do, shutting down schools and sending students to remote learning. It doesn't necessarily work that way. It's not necessarily going to make things be right. We've played an entire field hockey season. We've played an entire boys soccer season. We've played an entire girls soccer season. And not once did we hear about games getting canceled, postponed, players being eliminated from competition, teams being eliminated from competition because of COVID-19. I'm not saying this virus doesn't exist, because it absolutely 100% certainly does, as we just crossed 12 million cases in the United States today. As we are about, in a country, 80 to 90% capacity in every hospital in this country. As 1 in 5 hospitals in this country do not have enough staff to be able to manage the care levels that are needing to be taken. We are in a challenging and dangerous time. But we are not in a time where everything getting shut down or getting restricted will necessarily change the factor of what we're doing. Let Them Play RI was designed exactly to portray that message. The message that with all the things going on in the world, with all the things going on in this country, with all the things going on in the Ocean State, if you were going to let 3 other sports play, why couldn't we have played the one sport that was the biggest in the fall season in Rhode Island? And that was Rhode Island football. I hope that we realize, with the data that we have from the college football season, with the data that we have from the NFL season, with the data that we have from sports that were played, that once we get through the winter and into the spring, which by then we will have some semblance of a vaccine, there's no reason that football season in Rhode Island should be pushed off any further. It's time to let them play. If you want to be able to support the players who had their seasons impacted, support Let Them Play RI and the SFBNRI movement. We have merchandise available featuring the hashtag. You can go to sfbnri.com. Right on the very front page of our website, click on our merchandise store that will take you to it. And there are sweatshirts and t-shirts with the hashtag Let Them Play RI logo on it. Proceeds of that going to help support Rhode Island football players and athletes who were impacted by the cancellations of their fall seasons. We're going to take a quick break and be right back. You're watching Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Welcome back to Sports World Weekly on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. Matt Gillis with you here each and every Saturday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. on sfbnri.com and wherever else you can find Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. We are available on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, Periscope. There is just about every possible social media network. You can find us there. Of course, easiest way to get us, just go to twitch.tv/sportsworldweekly, and we are there every Saturday, 10 to 11 a.m. We have an amazing show for you coming up next week and starting through the next couple of weeks as we go towards the end of the season. We're going to be bringing in a lot of really awesome people from the SFBNRI family, coaches, players, friends of the sports media industry over the next couple of weeks for kind of a 2020 recap, as we're going to talk about, obviously, the COVID-19 pandemic, the impact of sports by the pandemic, and also what sports means to us. As we've been going through this difficult time over this past year, it's really made a lot of us, and I know especially myself, sit down and think not just how important sports are to our lives, to what we do in our jobs, but also to the communities around us, to the people that we interact with every single day, and to each other in the sports media industry. I know full well that, having been around this industry in sports media and production for about 20 years. And then before that time, the time that I spent as a player, as a coach, in multiple sports. If sports were to somehow all of a sudden get eliminated, I probably feel like a piece of me would die. And I know that's a hard thing to say, but in all honesty, you don't understand how impactful and important something like this becomes until you're as far into it as many of us are who have dedicated and spent our lives to it. And I know as fans, it's a very interesting and dynamic situation because so many fans are absolutely fervent about their favorite players and their teams and their schools. And, they just espouse, effortlessly about, like, oh yeah, this is it. This is, like they live it, they breathe it. We call them nations. We talk about this all the time, whether it's Patriots Nation, Red Sox Nation, Celtics Nation, Revs Nation, whatever it might be in Boston area, whether it be, the Yankees empire when it comes to Yankees baseball, talking about the Giants as the G-men, the Jets and the Green Army, it can be so many different things throughout all of the different towns, cities, states, regions. And sports has been such a big impact on us through so much of our lives. And when you get into the sports industry, it becomes even bigger. And we're going to take some time over the next couple of weeks with some pretty amazing people that we've got lined up to sit down and talk about the 2020 year as a whole and what it's meant to us from a sports perspective, a sports fandom perspective, and also a sports media perspective. So that's coming up starting next week on the Sports World Weekly, Saturdays at 10 a.m. I want to just touch really quickly as we get here into the last segment of the show again on a breaking news story. For those of you who are watching us live, the ACC announced that Clemson, Florida State, the game that was scheduled to be played today at noon, has been postponed. The postponement followed a conference call this morning with both teams and their medical personnel. They were unable to mutually agree on moving forward with the game due to minimum outline protocols within the ACC Medical Advisory Group report. That report is available on theacc.com if you want to go check it out and see what those protocols are. Both Clemson and Florida State within their programs have had issues and have had issues also on their campuses. And there is also considerable concern about the entire area, that entire region, whether it be through the Carolinas, Georgia, Alabama, Florida, Arkansas. There have been all sorts of issues with case numbers, infection rates, hospitalizations, etc. So with that being said, and where Clemson has played, where Florida State has played, where they are going to be playing, that game was to be held at Florida State. So that game has been postponed. The ACC scheduling model was 11 games. That was 10 conference, 1 non-conference over 13 weeks. Each team had 2 open dates. So there is going to be some schedule shuffling again by the ACC to figure out where they can fit that game into play. MLS playoffs kicking off today in just about an hour and 15 minutes from now. Orlando City will take on NYCFC. That game is the first one to go off. That's today at noon. Columbus Crew and the New York Red Bulls today at 3 p.m. Those are both Eastern Conference games. In the Western Conference, 3 games tomorrow. Sporting Kansas City and the San Jose Earthquakes, Minnesota United and the Colorado Rapids, Portland Timbers and FC Dallas. Those games all later in the day. Sporting KC, San Jose, that taps off at 4. Minnesota United, Colorado Rapids at 7:30. Portland Timbers, FC Dallas tomorrow at 10 p.m. All these times are Eastern time zone times. So I apologize if you may be tuning in from elsewhere. That is, if you are a San Jose fan, your game starts at 1 p.m. We'll just make sure that there's clarification on that. So there is football plus football tomorrow. Football both ways, as there is a slew of games for the MLS playoffs. Also, games that conclude the first round of play on Tuesday. Toronto FC, who just narrowly lost out on another Supporter Shield and are the defending MLS Cup champions, they will get started against an upstart Nashville FC in their first season in MLS play. This is not a new team as they were in the USL Championship. They jumped up into MLS. There is no promotion relegation, so that is not a promotion thing. That is just a change of dynamic for the team. They became an expansion team, but in their first season in MLS play, they clinch a playoff spot. They have a tough task ahead. They will tap off Tuesday, 6 p.m. Eastern against the defending MLS Cup champions, Toronto FC. The Philadelphia Union, who had their best season in franchise history ever, who then also became the best team in MLS history in capturing the Supporters Shield, and the way in which they did it. They had one of the best records, overall records in MLS history in capturing the Supporters Shield. They're going to feel a little bit of deja vu. They just took on the New England Revolution in what was their closing game of the year. They are going to take on, through the play-in games that caused this one, the New England Revolution again. They will be Tuesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. That game, of course, in Philadelphia. The Union have home field advantage throughout what would be the MLS playoffs. Seattle Sounders take on LAFC. That game is Tuesday, 10:30 p.m. So that closes up the Eastern Conference and Western Conference round ones in the MLS playoffs. Of course, as I said, games starting today. Orlando City FC against NYCFC. That game is at noon. Columbus Crew and the New York Red Bulls today at 3 p.m. What an amazing weekend it has been in sports. We have now brought you through on this last hour all of the things going on. Premier League results: Chelsea, a 2-0 victory over Newcastle. That has brought them up to level with Leicester on 18 points. Leicester still does have their week 9 match to play. They are in a top 5 match tomorrow as they take on 4th place and defending Premier League champions Liverpool, who are without a slew of players from Virgil van Dijk and Joe Gomez to Trent Alexander-Arnold and Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, Thiago Alcantara, Jordan Henderson, and Andy Robertson doubtful for tomorrow's match. Mohamed Salah, we do not know yet what is going on. He is under COVID-19 protocols. The Egyptian FA and the Premier League are working on that. He has been isolated. If he can pass 2 negative tests, he will be able to be cleared to play. We have also got you set up on the F1 race coming up next week in Bahrain. Lewis Hamilton has clinched his 7th FIA World Championship. Mercedes-Benz has clinched yet another Constructors' Championship. There is still a battle, and I didn't talk about this earlier, so I'm going to bring this into play now. There is still a battle going on in between the 2nd and 3rd place. There is a possibility, if certain things happen in certain ways, there is a possibility that Max Verstappen could potentially catch Valtteri Bottas. Bottas currently sits 2nd right now in the championship standings. There is possibility that Verstappen could catch Bottas over the last 3 races of the season. So while Hamilton has clinched the FIA World Championship and that is out of play, still look at what's going on in the 2nd and 3rd place battle between Bottas and Verstappen. Of course, there's also a lot of issues around about who's going to be where next season. We know some teams have already set their driver lineups, but there is a lot of interesting conversation, and that's going to come out to play as well, too, over the course of the next 3 weeks. So FIA World Championship done, but there are still 3 races to go in F1. Gulf Bahrain Air GP next Sunday, Sakir GP also in Bahrain the following weekend, and then the Yas Marina race, the Abu Dhabi GP on December 12th. We talked about the NWSL and the framework for the 9th season of National Women's Soccer League play here in the United States. Of course, all that in advance of the Olympic Games in the midst of the 2021 summer season. And then we will begin to talk about what would be a very historic 2022 season in the NWSL, the 10th anniversary season. And of course, that will see yet another expansion team come into play with LAC FC. You're up to date on all of the MLS playoffs, and that brings us to the end of the show. We want to thank you so much for tuning in to Sports World Weekly here on the Sports Fan Base Network, Rhode Island. I want to give a quick thank you one more time, and I know it's been said so many times on social media and over the past couple of days last night on Rhodey Sports Show with Ron Robert. I want to give a big thank you to Ron, to Mason, Laura, Nick, everybody who was a part of the Sports Fan Base Network Rhode Island family over the past couple of weeks, who helped be able to get everything together and everything running that allowed us to be able to bring all the exciting RIIL playoff action in the state of Rhode Island, in the Ocean State. What a thrilling couple of weeks of games that we had. Congratulations to all of the teams that we were able to broadcast who had great victories that moved them on. There are amazing state championship games going on in Rhode Island today and tomorrow, featuring many of those teams that we brought to you over the past week, whether it be Pilgrim or Tolgate or Mount Hope. We really thank all those schools for bringing us in to their communities and allowing us to bring those games to everyone across the country and across the world who were not able to be there because of the restrictions going on in the midst of this pandemic. And we thank all of the coaches for all of their great comments that were made during the Rhodey Sports Show last night about the job that we were able to do here at Sports Fan Base Network Rhode Island. We look forward to seeing you next year for hopefully a full season of action of RIIL, boys soccer, girls soccer, field hockey, football, hopefully next fall, where it normally should be, and many more sports. Tune in starting in January to see what we do with the winter sports season. And then, of course, we will continue on to the spring sports season as well. But in the meantime, in the interim, please make sure that you check sfbnri.com on that right side column. And I know I'm pointing to the left side of my box right now, but I'm talking about the right side column of the website. On the right side column of the website, our SFBNRI original shows. Every day there is a brand new show. We have some amazing new shows coming on board very soon that I am super excited about. Stay tuned to all of our social media platforms for big announcements on what we are doing. We are growing exponentially every day here at Sports Fan Base Network Rhode Island, and I could not be more privileged to be a part of this amazing network. Thank you for spending some time with me and with all of us here at SFBN Rhode Island this morning. Thank you for letting us into your homes during this extraordinary times. On behalf of myself, the entire staff of Sports World Weekly, and the whole SFBN family, we wish you all safe, health, and happiness. Stay safe, stay well, wash your hands, wear your masks, socially distance, and we'll together pull through this and be back in stadiums cheering on our favorite players, our favorite teams, our favorite cities, our favorite schools, our favorite everything very soon. I will see you all during the week, 4 p.m. Eastern daily, 4 a.m. That's the game. And of course, if it's Saturday, join me right here, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern for Sports World Weekly. Until then, thank you to everyone who tunes in the United States and around the world to Sports World Weekly each and every day. I'll see you on Monday for And That's the Game. Good night.